So in the talk, we have three sections. The first one is introduction. We're introducing ourselves and a bit of the relevance of the concept to biosphere reserves. The second part is about a previous stage of the project, which we did in Israel during the earlier part of this year. And then we will talk and introduce the next part of the project, the next stage, which is the current stage and is taking place in Germany, in Brandenburg. I'm a multimedia interdisciplinary artist, and I work a lot with body and physical presence and site-specific, and also site-specific in nature, increasingly so. And in between of the body and the digital media. Me and David have worked already on several projects before. I think David will introduce himself.
I'm David. I'm a researcher and artist. I'm working mostly as an artist on a site-specific approach and within participatory art practices. In my research, I have actually started a research center called Mundi Lab that deals with issues of public commons and especially in the Israeli public sphere.
So why do we bring art engagement to biosphere reserves? If you look at the Man and Biosphere program, the vision is for a world where people are conscious of their common future and of their interaction with the planet. And it's for thriving societies that are in harmony within the biosphere. So primarily the vision is about people. And then in the missions, the statement is repeated twice that the missions have to do with communicating experiences and lessons learned. So there is a necessity to communicate that specific vision. And this is where we think arts engagement comes in. Also, if you look at the Lima Action Plan, there is a lot of emphasis on communities, on social ecological systems, so the interaction between the social and the ecological, that the processes are open and participatory, and also there's an emphasis on promoting recognition and awareness. So again, this is where we think arts practice is very relevant for the Man and Biosphere program. And we do something that we call art reach, which is basically art in a social and now also in an environmental context. And if you look at previous work that has been done, and this is conclusions from research that has been done also in biosphere reserves. So it's also a research just general worldwide by the World Health Organization. You can see there from UCL, and also specifically that's been done in Australia at the Biosphere Reserve. And you can see that art reach or arts engagement has the capacity to engage communities, generate concern for issues, it promotes dialogue, it reduces social inequality, supports building a sense of place, and clarifies and enhances understanding of information. So this is where we basically start our proposition for arts engagement in biosphere reserves.
So our project in the Negev in Israel started by an invitation by the Arad Contemporary Art Center. And our proposal, which was accepted, was to create a site-specific and participatory art project, which will engage with the local communities and the location. At that time, we didn't know which are the communities that we will deal with, but we had a keen eye to look actually at the city of Arad and the neighboring settlements around it, which are mostly with Bedouins. The focus was actually to look at the relationship between the communities that share the same landscape as a function of the relationship and connection to their own place. I would say that at that time, we didn't know much about the Man and Biosphere program, didn't know yet, and we started to work on the project together with the curator, Dr. Irit Carmon Popper. So a few words about the Negev Desert. It's an area that takes half of Israel's area. So it's a large part of Israel, and only 10% of the population of Israel are living in the Negev. Out of this population, quarter of it are the Bedouin population. Half of this population, which is around 90,000, live in villages which are not officially recognized by the Israeli government. Here in the image, you see a settlement like that, or village of the Bedouins in the area near Arad called Bikat Kanaim. The area of the Negev in general is under pressure. The environment is under pressure because of polluting industries like the mining of phosphates, oil shales, and others. Furthermore, I would say that large areas are used by the army for a military exercise. So, a few words about the area that we chose for this project, which is Al-Bakia. We chose it because it was very nearby Arad, and because of its what we found a unique cultural landscape, which reflected an ancient desert tradition more than 2,000 years old. They have a very valuable heritage of traditional knowledge and different practices. They have low impact lifestyles because they have usually been harvesting rainwater, building with light construction, using gray water, and recycling most of their materials. And recently they use also solar power. They started to use. They have nearly no services as such as we know in modern countries. So no school system, no health and social services, no roads, no running water, and no electricity grid. And there are also, as most of the settlements in the Negev, they are under threat of eviction.
Just to say that there's no local school or kindergarten. Children do go to school, but they have to commute quite far.
Yeah, they have to commute around 90 minutes on each direction to get to school, 1 hour and a half. So here's a map that shows you the relationship between Arad, the city of Arad, which is in bottom left, Al-Bakia, which is the area where the Bedouin settlements are, and the Dead Sea. And north to the Dead Sea, you find Masada, which is a well-known tourist attraction. And here you can see the different aspects of their livelihoods. On the left bottom, you can see a water system. Usually every village is one big family, and they share a very interesting hospitality tradition, which is the shig, which is also a woman, is a different space than the man, but people are very welcome to come and stay and have a drink and also eat with the families. They still keep grazing goats and sheep and even camels in the area, as they used for many years before. And they serve, in a lot of cases, mostly in touristic areas, but also military, as the pathfinding of the desert. Since they know so well the desert, and they grew up in this area, they have a very important role. So I want to share with you how the project actually started. It started by a meeting we had with two local Bedouin representative. One was actually, we found out he was the leader of the whole community there. And then the first thing they told us is that they are under a threat of eviction from the area. And that they are supposed to be moved in very short time. So then they told us about an incentive that occurred a few years ago, 8 years ago, with the idea to declare the area as a biosphere area, which actually is a solution for them to stay as part of a large socio-economic and environmental program. The program stayed really in first stages, but it left with the Bedouins that there is a possibility for them to stay. And after we've learned about this possibility from them, we asked them actually if there's any action we can do with them to walk under this theme of the biosphere. And what they suggested was actually to revive the traditional rainwater harvesting cisterns that they were used until 30 years ago. And here on the right, you can see how does it structure. You can see that actually there's a big cistern which is digged up into a soft soil, and you have before that you have the water that is arriving with different channels from all sides of, usually from the mountains around. It depends on the topography, and then you have a little sedimentation pit just before to let all the sediments to fall down before to allow the clean water to enter to the water system. So we suggested actually to take this idea of reviving the cisterns as an option, an opportunity for a community engagement project, and to allow an inter-community encounter and cooperation. And also we hope to raise some solidarity about the situation of the Bedouin population in the area.
From this issue of the Bedouins' need for reviving the cisterns in the area of Al-Bakia, and our thoughts of involving the communities of the town of Arad, which is very close by to Al-Bakia. We're talking about a distance of a few kilometers, maybe 4 kilometers sometimes. The Masada, which you saw before, is about 10 kilometers distance from Arad. So it's a very, very close by area. And we thought of involving those communities in the actions of reviving those cisterns that have been out of use. And the reason why they've been out of use is because recently, from about the 80s and 90s, increasingly the Bedouins have been using their own laid down water system, which is not official. And you can see on the right hand side of the image, these are the pipes the way that they look like in the desert. The Bedouins pull water from the main pipe, from the main official pipe. And they're not allowed to put those pipes in the ground. They're not allowed to dig. And it all has to be very temporary. The water arrives in their places very, very hot. It's still their access to the water is pretty difficult. So this shows for us as a very good image for the distributive inequity and the civil inequality in the area. Also, it's a very good image for us, water as a scarce resource, for reflecting on the relationships between the communities, and also the connection of communities to the landscape. So we saw a different kind of connection with the Bedouin communities living in the desert versus the people, the urban community in the nearby town. And you can see the nearby town is very green, very lush. And also we found that this topic was very good for connecting the local issues, the local environmental issues and the local social issues to a broader global discourse around water. So in terms of participatory art actions, and we call them art actions because they had a symbolic element. We set out officially, or in terms of how we presented that to the communities that we engage with, we were setting out to revive the ancient cistern system in the area. And here you see an image of BIOM Alatin, which is a very large cistern. It's actually an open pool or a water tank. There's two different terms for the cisterns that we saw before in this type of cistern in Hebrew. But basically the function is the same. They're meant to collect rainwater that falls there in the area. And these are the only sources of water that would have been there before water was brought over there with pipes. And we had 4 actions. There was first an initial presentation in the survey, a tour that we did for people, and then we actually renewed the channels that bring water to this particular pit, and then also did some work with the sedimentation pit, revealing the sedimentation pit in front of the tank. But the main purpose was to bring the communities together and to start a collective engagement. And there was a symbolic purpose behind it. So these are more images of the actions that we were doing. And you can see there was a lot of participation. At one point, we brought in an archaeologist to help with the digging work and instruct us. As part of those actions, we were hosted by the Bedouins in their sheikhs. And had discussions. The Bedouins could share their views, and there could be a conversation, and really, really interesting process took off from that. And it was also very useful in that context of a place where there's conflict and friction, to shift the conversation from political and ideological discourse to one that is more about connection to place and nature protection. And because we had to use local traditions and practices, it meant that the Bedouins actually were in charge of the work, which was a very nice change of roles in a way in what's common, usually one sees in Israeli society. In addition to those participatory art actions, we also, me and David, and an additional artist that was working with us, it is nice. We had the creative interventions in the landscape and in the location. Here you can see some of them. One, when you see the images with the donkey on the right-hand side at the top, that's a donkey journey that we did in order to reflect the reality of the Bedouin experience of the urban landscape. So they have a very different way of entering and leaving the town than would the urban population would have, because they don't necessarily come with a car, they don't necessarily stick to the roads or the paths, they perceive the desert in a very different way. We also had a journey with you can see at the bottom, a journey with a water canister, where we took water from an active cistern in the valley, took it several kilometers on foot to fill in the empty swimming pool of the local country club, as a reflection on the very, very large gap between the use of that scarce resource of water in a very, very short distance within a small geographical space. We also had a large site-specific dance performance that took place at that specific cistern where we were working, which also brought another element of embodying the quality of water for the audience, and also engaging them with the themes of the project in a different way.
Through the project, we realized that actually we work collaboratively with a large number of organizations in collaboration or in networking towards our actions. And slowly, we decided to map this relation between the different groups, and we call them agents, which is a term that is coming from social studies and participatory art methods for individuals or groups or organizations that have agency or impact upon the specific issue that you are dealing upon. So in our specific example is the renovation of the cisterns in the desert of El Bkea with the community of El Bkea of the Bedouins. So it's also we dealt with the archaeologist from the Department of Antiquity, which is a government office, to do the works. As well, we were dealing with the municipality, different bureau, dealing with the different aspects of communities, education department, and of course environmental department, and the tourism department, for example. We were in dialogue with the academia, for example, Professor Uriel Safriel from the Hebrew University, which is also the head, or used to be the head, of the Israel's Man and Biosphere program in UNESCO, as well as scholars from the Technion, like Daniel Orenstein, professor. Furthermore, we worked with the different NGOs that had some agency in the area. And what you can see here, that actually in the yellow, you can see the different communities of Arad and El Bakia. And from the map, you can see that there is an enclosure process upon the Bedouin commons in different aspects, if it's agriculture, if it's issues of constructions, of right of way, enclosure of their rights. The project was concluded with an exhibition of the works, which also incorporated indoor and outdoor site-specific installation with the use of materials from the El Bkea valley, like water pipes and water tanks. The exhibition also served as a place for showing out the process, all the documentation and the different meeting and the different action around. And it served also, we had an area where we had maps showing about the area, as I said, videos, and also research materials about the Man and Biosphere and the Bedouins community. In a way, this the exhibition served as a platform for discussing the possibility of transformation towards a biosphere zone in the area. In the exhibition, we also exhibited this map in consultation with Dr. Lihi Golan from the Technion, who is a researcher in biosphere planning, to see how can we suggest a biosphere in the area. And that was actually served as a platform for discussion about possible futures in that perspective. So you can see in the green area, it's already a natural reserve that is existing. And we added another 3 core areas of interest near the area of Arad. The Bedouin communities are the little spots in the orange of Al Bakia, which are in the buffer zones. And Arad is included in the transition area. So it's a kind of a unique model where it includes also a town in a desert biosphere. So we had a lot of different reactions to that idea. And it included also not only local residents, but also the local politicians.
If we look at our intentions at the beginning of the project in Arad, and we look at the outcomes, so we wanted to have public exposure for the project themes. So water is a scarce resource and sustainability, equity of resources, specifically with the issue as it presents itself in that area of the Bedouins versus the urban population. And we also added the biosphere reserve vision because we found that the Man Biosphere vision presented very, very good solutions for the issues and the problems that we were seeing in the location. So we had a lot of exposure. We were on national TV. We were on national media with this story, and the Bedouins were also interviewed, and the local activists were also interviewed. And this is something that cannot be taken for granted. Of course, we had the exhibition launch, and there were lots of people visiting. There was a whole educational program around the exhibition for schools and youth. Then we were invited to be at the conference with a member of Israeli member of parliament, Israeli minister, and 2 members of parliament, and municipal leaders, and all of and much more. So that got quite a boost. We got a lot of community engagement and inter-community cooperation, which supported the establishment of a local grassroots network. So the idea was that we come in as artists, we do our little interventions and actions, but we leave behind us some kind of a network already that we started, we kind of initiated, and that continues after we move on. And we very successful in shifting the conversation from political, ideological to one that is about heritage and nature protection and connection to place, which offers a better conversation and an easier access to solutions. And this is, again, not to be taken for granted, especially in that specific context where we were working. And still, we had situations where people coming into the exhibition and finding the issues that we were dealing with and dealing with the Bedouin communities it creates a reaction because of the political baggage that is attached to it. As a conclusion from that stage of the project, we came up with the term environmental reconciliation, which is basically, we have now questions. We have some idea about what they mean and what the answers might be, but we want to take this further and research it further. And the question for us is, what is the importance of engaging society as a vital bridge between environment and economy? Or we look at, so basically a lot of policy deals with environment and economy, and sometimes this bit of society gets left behind, especially the issue of equity. Also, we find that the environment can serve as a mirror for the social, political, and vice versa, so that one can actually address issues on one sphere and resolve issues in another sphere. So looking at art in biosphere reserves, we found that out of 700 biosphere reserves, or more than 700 biosphere reserves around the world, only very few have actually an integral and ongoing arts engagement program. And we found the one in Sweden, one in Australia, the one in North Devon, where I already did a couple of projects. And we decided to bring it to Brandenburg. We have here 3 large and established biosphere reserves in close proximity to a major urban center, which is interesting as a continuation, a bit, and an expansion on the topic that we were addressing before. And also here we're dealing again with water, but from a different and interesting perspective, a new perspective on the similar issue, or the same issues of water shortages, water quality, and everything that comes with it. We have some emergent themes for our project in Brandenburg that again are a continuation of our previous stage. And we ask, how can we, as artists, can use water as an effective and powerful image for communicating environmental concerns and the social pressures arising from them? And these range from, there's climate change and global sea level rise and changing weather patterns, but it's also has to do with habitat loss and migration, border porosity, and rising conflict. So it can actually cover a very broad range of topics, and we have some underlying themes that we want to focus on. One is borders and boundaries. Then there's the issue of security, mobility, and migration. And then we have what we might call the ARC narrative, which is the issue of the climate crisis and how biosphere reserves are seen as kind of kernels of survival. So, you know, we have this sense of this, the deluge is coming, and then how do we create solutions for the social and ecological resilience? That's one emergent theme. And then the next one, David, you want to take that?
We were looking at the environmental reconciliation. From our understanding of the previous project, it became really a central theme for us. And in that we asked, what role can art engagement play in mediating environmental concerns and in reflecting the relationships between humans and nature, communities and the environment? And there we had also lined up three different themes. One is the society, culture, and sustainability. Further on, another theme was low-tech and high-tech, and we were looking at the engagement with natural materials and organically evolving crafts as a means for increasing awareness and of connection with the natural environment. I would say that art engagement allows also a unique outreach. It's a tool. We look at it as a tool, art as a tool for an experiential and alternative modes of communication. And we really would love you to come and collaborate with us with that adventure. If it's research students, if it's researchers, if it's students, you are all welcome to come and join us.